Okay, this is a very quick example of what I do in Lightroom. It is not by any means the way we should do it, or anyway, I'm not an expert at all, but just for those who have asked, here's what I would do in Lightroom. I'm taking a picture that I posted in the Facebook RP group, and I'm just going to show you what I would do with this. So I'm taking this one here. It's quite underexposed. What I did actually was bracket these and do an HDR merge with it, but I'm not doing that. I'm just going to take this one and show you over here what I do. So I start at the top. First thing I do now is something like this. I'd probably just up the exposure a bit because you can see there's detail there. But for something as dark as this, you bring up the shadows and you can see the detail coming in there, and drop down the highlights, and you can see the sunset is coming in nicely as well. So I would do that to get a balance of shadows and highlights. The white point, I would hold down the Option key. I think it's the Alt key on a PC, and when I click on this, the screen goes black, and when I go to the right, there is the sun starting to be clipped, so I bring it down a wee bit and let go, so there's all detail there. In the blacks I do the same thing and bring it down, but I let a couple of, that's a lot of things being clipped, so if I let that go, everything's being clipped there. But I wouldn't keep it completely white. I would maybe just have a wee bit of the grass in there, like that. So we've got a bit of detail coming through there. Bump up the shadows a wee bit, maybe add a wee bit of contrast. This is what I do just routinely. Texture and clarity for something like this, I normally bump it up with this and maybe a bit of a dehaze. You see there, +7, +6. I take it as a rule for things like this, and especially for luminance and saturation, I never really go above the first notch on the line. After that, you've gone a bit too far. Vibrance, I'd maybe bring up a bit, again to the first notch. Saturation, I'd leave. As soon as I do that, I go all the way down to the bottom, right? Oh no, after that, I go to the lens corrections, so that's done first. This was taken with a Samyang 14mm lens, so that's corrected the lens. With this one here, it seems to brighten up the corners a wee bit too much, so I bring it down a bit so it's natural. But then I go right down to the bottom into the calibration. I bring the red hue to the right, I bring the blue hue to the left, and you see it looks a wee bit weird color wise. I then bring the green hue somewhere where it makes sense. That's far too green if I take it that way, but this way here it looks a wee bit better, so I leave it about there. I mess around with the saturation, see what it looks like. Maybe it's a wee bit too saturated there. Sometimes I bring the blue down a wee bit. The green saturation can make a difference, so we'll drop that down a bit. But the thing to balance it out here as well is also the shadows. If you bring the tint of the shadows, there you go, up to the green, there it kind of neutralizes everything. To the magenta, it goes weird. Now, that's in this image. Sometimes the magenta makes it balance and neutral. So you just test and see which one makes it more natural. So by bringing it there, that's a bit more natural. I can maybe then mess around with the saturation a wee bit again here. But I've kind of got somewhere that I like. Maybe I went too far with the saturation. Right there, and you can see the difference that's made if I uncheck this. Now it's subtle, but it's quite powerful as well. Look at the color of the ocean and the sky, and certainly the grass. It's sort of changed it, warmed it up a bit. From there, I go straight up to my hue, saturation, and luminance, and I would bring these down so that the colors are what they're supposed to be, or closer at least to it. So with this one here, I'm bringing this down. Okay, it's far too red, that's far too yellow. I don't even think I need to really adjust the orange at all. The yellow, if I bring it too far, it goes green. Bring it down, it goes a wee bit red actually, so maybe red's a wee bit better to have. So don't forget, I never really go down below the first or past the first notch. The clouds, because of that lens calibration thing, this kind of goes a wee bit too much teal, so I normally bring the aqua and the blue up to make it more blue and natural sky. Purple and magenta never really seem to be in my pictures, any of them really. Saturation, like that's way oversaturated there, so I bring that down This time I maybe go down further than, certainly if I'm desaturating I go further than this. If I'm increasing the saturation I won't go further than the notch. So we have it about there. Yellow, I'll bring that down a wee tiny bit. The sky, sometimes it's easy to oversaturate the sky, so I normally bring that down a bit as well. With something like this I would maybe increase the luminance a wee bit for the sunrise. I decrease the luminance for the sky and the sea to make the blue stand out a wee bit more. And that's that. Then I go down to the color grading. Start with the shadows. I normally bring the shadows to blue, mid-tones to blue as well, and then the highlights to about red, yellowish. This is where I kind of go around. You can see, look at the sun. That's where you're seeing all the difference. I mean, you can go too far here. Just subtle changes. Sometimes I would take the mid-tones and bring them in. So in this case, this darkens it kind of down a wee bit. This makes it a wee bit warmer, and because it was first thing in the morning, I maybe go with that. Down here in the blending, I would normally blend it a wee bit more, and then I check the balance to see whether I want to go to the left or the right. Right's far too much. That's far too warm. Left is a bit colder. Actually, the balance is quite good where it was. I might lean towards actually right in the middle there. You just follow your instinct. From there I go to sharpening. I click on the wee box there and find a bit that I can see. Hold the option key down, or alt I think on the PC. Click on the radius and adjust it normally to about 1, 2, 3, about between the 4th and 5th really does me. Same with the detail. I normally mask all the way up here, so I don't want this. I don't want the sky being masked. I don't want or sharpened. I don't want much of the sea being sharpened too much anyway. And then I go to the left in the sharpening, holding down the alt key because it makes it black and white, which is easier to see. And then I bring it up, bring it down so you can see it going out of focus, and then bring it up. This is far too sharp, so bring it down and bring it to around about the second, between the second or third notch is normally where I go. And that's going to be good enough for that. After that, sometimes what I would do from there is do a post-crop vignette to see how that looks, if it makes it look. So I would do the vignette, bring the midpoint in a wee bit, up the feathers, again never going past the first notch really, and then I uncheck it to see what it looks like. I think that vignette looks okay, so I'm going to keep it. I also need to then go all the way up here and then check the horizon. So I click on the crop tool, click on the angle, and draw a line on the horizon, and that's the horizon straight. Hit return. In fact, that looks far too much. I went too far there. Let me do it again. That's better. That's the horizon straight. And then something like this, what I would do is normally use the gradient filter, draw down from the top. And at this point, a lot of times I would put a range mask on and go to luminance, hold down option or alt and click on the range so that I can see. Now let me increase this so you can see the difference. If I click on the show luminance, oh no, I don't need to do that. Click on option, hold the option key down, and you can see the part of the grass is there. That's going to be affected, so I bring this up until that goes mostly black. You see this, I don't want the sea to be affected as well. See, the sea is getting affected at the minute, so I bring it up until all that sort of goes away, and maybe bring this down a bit. This increases the harshness of it, and there I'm going to get a bit of the sea in, but that's okay. So all I'm going to really do is adjust for the sky at the minute, if you can see that. So I'll do that, and then I'll either decrease the exposure a bit if the sky's too bright, or increase it. In this case I might actually brighten up the sky a wee tiny bit. I don't want it too much, and in this case I also might no, I'm not going to change the hue. Double click on that to reset that. It's the saturation I want to change. It's probably a wee bit too saturated. It looks nice on the screen, but sometimes it can just look a wee bit overpowering. Always better to go less when it comes to saturation. And that's that. I would also sometimes do the same thing, do a new one from the bottom, and maybe increase the shadows and the exposure a bit. It's a wee bit too harsh. But what is maybe, let's see how that looks. Maybe that's not so bad. Sometimes I would instead just use the brush. Grab the brush, brush a wee bit here, and a wee bit here, just in the foreground, just to make the foreground stand out a wee bit. Maybe that's a wee bit dark there as well. So just sort of brush around here just to bring that up a bit. And let's see, bring the exposure a tiny bit up, not too much. Again, I'm not going past this first notch. Bring up the contrast a bit, and that looks about right. That's all I do. Simple as that. I would then pop it into Photoshop and then like clone out things that I don't want to see. So for example here, if I use the spot healing brush, I would take away the lens flare there and there. It's easier in Photoshop. Photoshop seems to do it much quicker than Lightroom. Maybe there. And take away those, and this bit of highlight. I kind of look through and see where my eye's going to be distracted. This puddle here is a wee bit distracting, but does that help? Nope. Oh, it does there. It just took a while. There you go. And maybe this puddle here, and I think that's going to make it turn into grass, so I'm going to bring this up to the path. Not happy with that one. So we'll hit Option and delete that one. I'll just leave that one maybe as it was. Or actually what I would do is we zoom in to 300, and where's that bit? There it is there. Now I can bring my spot healing brush. I don't want to sample from there. So I'm going to bring it over to the path here. There we go. That looks a bit better. And you won't notice that really from a distance there. And that's pretty much me. That's what I would do. And that's the photo saved. So there's the before. Oh no, that didn't work. There's the before. And there's the after. Before and after. I hope that helps.